Thank you. Thanks, Steve. Firstly, thank you for the opportunity to come and share a bit of the knowledge and the journey of what we're doing. I think, as they say, there is the most contagious thing is an idea whose time has come, and I think that we're most now very much in that time. So I'm Marcellus Valley, commonly called Mark Rex Pauly. It just about says it all, really. Been on this journey in this lifetime for quite a while, and had quite a bit of information passed on to me by my forebears as to what actually transpired here way back in the early 1800s, and realised a lot of the deceptions that had been played out upon people, bearing in mind that most people, get their information from others, and often that which isn't correct becomes a given. And we'll see that more and more as we go through. That for me, in this present time, this journey with Te Waka Pūtanga really came to the fore in 2008, 2007, 2008. However, looking at it from another perspective, started a long, long time ago. So since then, we've just been following that which has been laid out for us by our forebears in the two documents, and just proceeding through with that and putting together a structure that we believe is what our collective ancestors saw as a means for people of diverse cultures to live together peacefully and harmoniously, sharing in the abundance of the land and operating to a very simple structure of life, really. So, so a lot of the things that I'll share with you, we've actually put to the fore and tried at various things, and some of the results that we've had from that. So self-determination for us is the right of every man and woman to determine their own affairs. Each of us is imbued by the Creator with free will, so therefore we have the right to determine our own affairs, and the choices we make determine their realities. So self-determination is your right to determine your own affairs. Sovereignty is quite different. Sovereignty often gets confused with self-determination, often gets confused with monarchy. Well, monarchy's kings and queens, and self-determination is, as we've explained. So sovereignty is a choice. It's a code of conduct. It's living this mortal existence in honour of the Creator, whatever form you think that may take. But all we need to do is look around to see there is a creation here, something put this all together. So obviously there's a higher energy field than what we hold here in the physical realm. So sovereignty is about living in honour of the Creator, service to all humanity, especially the children, because it's through the coming generations that we reincarnate into this physical realm, and it's holding that knowledge that we're a living soul embodied in a human vessel. Yeah, there's a lot of different movements out there. There's a lot of people striving to create change. There's a lot that are still locked in conflict with the existing regime. So the difference with what we do is, for us, it's about healing the system. When you comprehend the rule of law in this territory and how it is meant to work, you'll actually see that it's actually a very, very good system that's been put in place. However, that's our ship of state, if you like, but that's been pirated. And now we've had what was originally designed to operate as a restorative system, always about enhancing the harmony, has now become a punitive system and pretty much an energy extraction system. Of course, your energy being your currency. That's why they call money currency. So it looks like wherever opportunity you have the controlling regime now is extracting your energy from you. So we're actually pretty much being controlled by a parasitical system. It doesn't need to be that way. The only reason that it can operate is because of the energy that people give it. Over time, there's been a lot of corruption happen through these various institutions. So for us, it's always been about bringing the system to order so it operates for the benefit of everybody and operates to the rule of law that was laid down and internationally acknowledged in 1835 with the proclamation of sovereign state, which a lot of people misconstrue as a declaration of independence, mainly because in 1834, when the flag, the Whakaputanga flag, was gazetted in the Sydney Gazette, it was gazetted as the flag of the Declaration of Independence of the United Tribes of New Zealand. Now, the big question which arises is that who were the tupuna, the rangatira of the time, declaring their independence from? If you look at more of a European system, each rangatira was like a monarch in their own kingdom. Each hapu rohi was an independent nation. So who were they declaring their independence from? Nobody. They already were. So the sovereign order was the think tank, if you like, the collective of the various orders of sovereigns from all around the globe. And over time, the cult, the regime that seems to think it's in control at the moment, is systematically going about taking these lines of knowledge out. One of the examples of that is what we know of as the witch burnings, because it was nothing to do about witches and warts on your nose and all that sort of carry on. It was all about particularly women who have that stronger nurturing spirit, using the vortexing of water and the essences or the resonances or the muri of various things to create growth enhancing and life health promoting potions. But getting put out there as witches, of course, and then humans doing what humans do, believe most things that they're told by somebody they think knows more than them, of course, rushed around and drowned and burnt them. But what it did was it took a huge portion of that type of knowledge that had been passed on from generation to generation to generation over thousands of years and just removed that from the social memory complex. Luckily, as many of you are probably aware, each of us is the sum total of all our ancestors before us. We are the physical manifestation. In this form here, embodied in a human vessel, we are the physical manifestation of all our forebears before us. We carry all their knowledge in our DNA. It's just that you don't learn this stuff. So, we have these very good structures of indoctrination now, and education has gone out the window. This is why we still have a lot of the schools that we have. They used to call them factory schools because they're set up like factories, ready for you to march in and go to work. So anyway, over time, with this inveigling, if you like, of the various orders of sovereigns and this doing away with those lines of knowledge, the sovereign order approached the tupuna here way back in the early 1800s and explained the situation. And if you read if you can still get them, a lot of this knowledge has now been gone over the last 40 years over time, but you used to be able to get access to a lot of the old journals of the tupuna in the library and read what they wrote about their travels, read what people who, like our European forebears that were already here in the early 1800s, what they understood about things. But anyway, we were granted sanctuary here. The various orders of sovereigns were granted sanctuary here. And the tupuna, the rangatira of the time, took on the responsibility of protecting the sovereign order and upholding that code of conduct, if you like, for all humanity. And over 28 years of negotiation, put together the proclamation of sovereign state, or Hei Whakaputanga o Te Rangatiratanga o New Tireni. The document, as I say, is written in Te Reo, but it's also written in a style that I know of as sovereign script, which many of you would have heard of. It's the reading between the lines, if you like. What's the intent of the document? So a lot of our European forebears were sovereigns in their own right. They were already living under their covenant with the Creator. Each of these lines were invited to send people here, knowing that we hold that information within our DNA. So often a lot of the younger people, young adults, even right down to children, came from various parts around the globe and came here. Right from 1807 onwards, there was a system of whakamana put in place, which is strategic alliances, particularly through marriage. So this was about combining the hapu, bearing in mind each hapu was a country in its own right, and also bringing in our European, particularly European forebears, but those from Asia as well, and the Americas, and weaving a korowai, if you like. So what was set up here in 1835 under the Proclamation of Sovereign State was known as the Bastion of the Sovereign. That's why we have the Whakaputanga flag in the way we do. That sanctuary was granted here. However, in order for that to happen, it was also for the tauiwi, which is something quite different to Pākehā. The tauiwi were seen by the rangatira as sovereigns in their own right. That's why if you have a look in the original document, tauiwi was spelt with a capital T, the same as the rangatira. And Pākehā were already subject to another authority. That's why they're spelt with a small p. So that's the difference between the two. So the 1835 Proclamation of Sovereign State put in place, one, the proclamation and proclaiming the sovereign collective, if you like, or sovereign state of the substantive territory. That's Article 1 of the document. You can have a proclamation of sovereign state. So what's the Constitution? Now, Constitution is a set of guidelines or principles by which one governs or is governed. Constitution. So Article 2 lays down the Constitution. Where does the authority and where does the responsibility lie? And that lies with the rangatira who were there representing their hapu, so their country. And they came together and they established the constitutional order and established and brought over the sovereign order and the responsibility of upholding that. And that order is called Ko te Wakaminga o ngā hapu o New Tireni. And on the original document, which you can easily find online, a copy of it, you'll see that at the end of Article 1, that's double underscored, and it has an open speech mark, which in language as I understand it means that pay attention to this and that the conversation hasn't been finished yet because it's not closed off. Okay? And within that document, they call upon foreign councils, runga, tauiwi runga, to join with that constitutional order and that sovereign order for the betterment of the territory as a whole. Now, a lot of people get the confusion of confusing New Tireni with New Zealand, and they're two quite different things. New Tireni is global in scope. It's a transliteration of the new territory, whereas New Zealand is not a country with land. It never has been, never will be. New Zealand is an administrative realm that was set up under Te Tiriti o Waitangi, which was the agreement between the parties. In no way did Te Tiriti take over the 1835 proclamation. They're two quite different things. One's a proclamation of sovereign state, constitutional order, rule of law, and the other one is a treaty between two sovereigns. So granting that protection here, what was laid out was that the hapu hold the authority within their rohi, within their country, or what we might call a council area, or in Switzerland they call it a canton. And this put New Tireni on the same footing in the lawful arena. The international lawful arena is things like the City of London, Vatican, District of Columbia, Liechtenstein, Monaco, the cantons of Switzerland, and many other sovereign states. So sovereignty is proclaimed, that you make that covenant. So having people come here to bring that knowledge here, to preserve that knowledge and enhance that knowledge for these coming times was the key purpose of that. And in order for that to do and work smoothly, they put in place the structure of the responsibility and the authority. And it was internationally and is internationally recognised. However, as I say, it was hidden in plain sight because when the flag was gazetted in 1834, it was gazetted as a Declaration of Independence, swinging off what had happened over in America with the American Declaration of Independence. Well, they couldn't really do a proclamation of sovereign state because they certainly weren't behaving as a sovereign. Which is also quite interesting how a lot of these so-called city-states or some of these sovereign states call themselves sovereign, but they obviously have a different definition to the word sovereignty than what we do. So this set up a structure for what we have today, and with the whakamana process, this is why we all are actually, particularly in this country, are quite closely connected. Now, what a lot of people don't realise is that in 1807, 1808 also started the negotiations for Te Tiriti. Okay, now if you have a look at the preamble of Te Tiriti, because in a treaty, it's an agreement of the parties, it's contract law, and because it's done between two authorities in their own right, it's international law, only binds the parties who are involved. So the two parties in Te Tiriti are, it says it in the first line, Ko Victoria e te Kuino i Ngarangi, I Victoria, the Queen of England, and Ngā Rangatira o Ngā Hapua New Tireni, the chiefs of the tribes, if you like, of the new territory. So nowhere do either document mention New Zealand. In Te Tiriti, in Article 1, now the preamble outlines why you're having the treaty. And there's some quite reasonable interpretations of that that you can come across. As a hapu, we did our own interpretations of that, availing ourselves to the great knowledge of the elders, because we're very limited in the reo speakers. So the preamble lays out the reason for the treaty, which was to protect and preserve that which was already here and the structure that had been laid down in 1835. Articles of agreement outline the areas of obligation and responsibility, if you like. So in Article 1 of Te Tiriti, the rangatira granted Victoria a privilege of administrative governance. In other words, to set up an administrative governance, a system of governance to do the administration, bearing in mind that a lot of our, particularly European and other forebears, were invited to come here, so there needed to be records kept. As you can imagine, back in 1830, by the time we got to 1835, the tupuna and the native people who were not in a position to do that sort of record keeping. However, the English monarchy was, so an agreement was formed between them. The English monarchy got paid for that, and this is where a lot of confusion comes in over things like the crown and the crowns. So Article 1 granted this privilege of administrative governance to Victoria to set up an administrative governance here, and the role of and that established the realm of New Zealand, and the role of that was to see that the customary law, which is the paramount authority in the territory, the customary law was upheld, to maintain and administer the common law, because New Zealand is a common law jurisdiction, and to administer itself and its own affairs through its legislation, the acts and statutes. Now, what a lot of people over time, of course, these things have sort of been corrupted in the way they were designed to operate, where now the common people are having the legislation which binds the crown, because that's what it says, being imposed upon them. Okay? So customary law is the highest law in each of the rohi, that's the paramount authority. Common law is for the common people, if you like, for those who are not part of a hapu that is standing to ko te wakamingia. And of course the legislation is primarily for the public service. The constabulary's role is to keep the peace and prevent offences against the peace. They operate separately from the political arena. And rightly so. Each of the public services, constabulary and judiciary, swear oaths of office to Queen Elizabeth II, who got usurped some time ago, finally back in 1986 under the New Zealand Constitutional Act, which is completely unlawful. which many of you would be aware about. So the public servants swear an oath to Queen Elizabeth II because she holds the responsibility of upholding Te Tiriti o Waitangi. Okay? That's her role. That's been passed on to her, and she's also defender of the faith, which in some respects can be a religious concept, but it is also a defender of the faith that a small emerging sovereign state, which New Tarangi was at the time, the faith that it held in one of the greatest empires in the world at the time, that it would uphold its part of the agreement. Bearing in mind that the English monarchy had been well inveigled by the cult and with the corruption for a long period of time, a lot of this, particularly with those monarchies, European monarchies, happened over the time of the Crusades, which is a whole other story. What's relevant to us is what was put in place and that these documents are there. They are internationally recognised. But what happened, of course, over time, it's like the old frog in the pot scenario, is, you put a frog in a pot of hot water, it'll jump out, but you put a frog in a pot of cold water and you slowly turn the heat on, it will sit there until it's cooked. So you might say, welcome to the pot. Right? And the heat's been turned up little by little by little. We have gone in my generation from this country being the greatest place in the world to raise your kids to having internationally recognised the third highest quality of life in the world, till we don't even rank in the top 20 now, where we had a public service where you had free healthcare. A lot of the stuff was all free. Why? Because it had already been paid for. It had already been paid for by our forebears. To now where you pay for everything. And we are being pillaged and plundered. And that has happened over time. However, we do have the solution, which is handy, being that we live in a water world. However, that solution can only be effected when we rise to the occasion, if you like, or stand in our capacity. Now, everybody has a right of self-determination, and there are those who will choose to live by the code of the sovereign. Sovereignty is that choice. That's a choice that we make knowingly, willingly, with the Creator, to live in that manner. So this is the structure that was put together. So with the 1840 Te Tiriti, that took over the responsibility of, again, protecting the hapu, the sovereigns, when enacting their sovereign state. And what happened over a great period of time, of course, is that these things ceased to be. So because the 1835 document, the Proclamation of Sovereign State, is a proclamation of sovereign state, and only a living soul embodied in a human vessel in the physical plane can hold covenant with the Creator to live in honour of the Creator and service towards humanity, especially your children. Once you pass on, then you're back there anyway, because then that brings in that structure that was set in place with that 1835, which then, of course, progressed with the 1840. Now, 1840, as I was saying, started its negotiations in 1807, 1808 as well. These are they work hand in hand. Te Tiriti cannot fly, if you like, without he whakaputanga. So as I say, over time, these things have been diminished. Now, because it is a proclamation of sovereign state and only a living soul can enact that covenant in the physical realm, as each of the tupuna that put their mark and made that commitment to that and put their mark on that document, as they passed on, then the one that stepped into that role, that responsibility, if you like, needed to also proclaim their continuing enactment, because that's what makes it a living document. So although the document is in perpetuity, its enactment, if you like, need to be done on a generational basis, because it's only when you're enacting your sovereign state that you are in your sovereign state. You can cede your sovereign state any minute of any day by the choices you make, and only you can restore that by the choices you make. That's what living in honour is about. So nobody can bestow sovereignty upon you, and nobody can cede it for you. It's an individual, personal commitment made with the Creator to live in a prescribed manner. Not for everybody, but it's available there for all. And then over time, because of the structure that was put in place over time, that's what was transferred here. The knowledge that was passed to me was held by the Genovese at one time, and they were constantly, for hundreds of years, at war with the Venetians. A lot of people think it was over trade, and to some degree it was. But if you have a look at the flags of those two nations, in the Venetian one you'll see the Egyptian symbology, and in the Genovese one you'll see the Red Cross, which to me I've always known as the mark of the sovereign. Literally saying from the four corners of the earth, the blood of humanity flows together, we are one. This is why we can interbreed, given our various cultures. We are one social memory complex. That's why anything that happens to any of us impacts upon the whole. So you could look upon it that each human vessel is a cell in a greater organism called the social memory complex, which completely operates the ethereal realm but manifests here in the physical.